Hello, I'm Daniel. I wanted to read to you a little passage from the heart of the Buddha's teaching. And this is the chapter called The Four Noble Truths. And I'm going to read this and then comment on it just a little bit. Okay? So again, this is the heart of the Buddha's teaching by Thich Nhat. The Four Noble Truths, chapter 3. After realizing complete perfect awakening, parentheses, Samyak Sambodhi, the Buddha had to find words to share his insight. He already had the water, but he had to discover jars like the Four Noble Truths and the Noble Eightfold Path to hold it. The Four Noble Truths are the cream of the Buddha's teaching. The Buddha continued to proclaim these truths right up until his great passing away, Mahaparinirvana. The Chinese translate the Four Noble Truths as Four Wonderful Truths or Four Holy Truths. Our suffering is holy if we embrace it and look deeply into it. If we don't, it isn't holy at all. We just drown in the ocean of suffering. For truth, the Chinese use the characters for word and king. Word king. No one can argue with the words of a king. These four truths are not something to argue about. They are something to practice and realize. The first noble truth is suffering, or dukkha. The root meaning of the Chinese character for suffering is bitter. Happiness is sweet, suffering is bitter. We all suffer to some extent. We have some malaise in our body and mind. We have to recognize it and acknowledge the presence of this suffering and touch it. To do so, we may need the help of a teacher and a sangha, friends in the practice. The second noble truth is the origin, roots, nature, creation, or arising, samudaya, of suffering. After we touch our suffering, we need to look deeply into it to see how it came to be. We need to recognize and identify the spiritual and material foods we have ingested that are causing us to suffer. The third noble truth is the sensation, or nirodha, of creating suffering by refraining from doing the things that make us suffer. This is good news. The Buddha did not deny the existence of suffering, but he also did not deny the existence of joy and happiness. If you think that Buddhism says everything is suffering and we cannot do anything about it, that is the opposite of the Buddha's message. The Buddha taught us how to recognize and acknowledge the presence of suffering, but he also taught the cessation of suffering. If there were no possibility of cessation, then what is the use of practicing? The third noble truth is that healing is possible. The fourth noble truth is the path, or marga, that leads to refraining from doing things that cause us to suffer. This is the path that we need the most. The Buddha called it the Noble Eightfold Path. The Chinese translate it as the path of 8 right practices. Right view, right thinking, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right diligence, right mindfulness, and right concentration. And there's a diagram here, and I'll probably post a photo of this in the group because I do like it. But I want to go on to read there's a footnote. And the footnote is about the Eightfold Path, which we'll talk about another time. But the footnote says, the Pali word for right is sama, and the Sanskrit word is samyak. Samyak. It is an adverb meaning in the right way, straight or upright, not bent or crooked. Right mindfulness, for example, means that there are ways of being mindful that are right, straight, and beneficial. Wrong mindfulness means there are ways to practice that are wrong, crooked, and unbeneficial. Entering the Eightfold Path, we learn ways to practice that are of benefit, the right way to practice. Right and wrong are neither moral judgments nor arbitrary standards imposed from the outside. Through your own awareness, we discover what is beneficial, right, or what is unbeneficial, wrong. So, these are, they're the most basic teachings of Buddhism, but at the same time, sometimes are the most challenging to talk about because people have some people who know just enough, just a little, just enough, can think Buddhism is very negative. People get that impression very easily when they hear the whole Four Noble Truths, especially that first noble truth, life is suffering, right? Or there is suffering, I think is another way to put it. And so people think, oh, Buddhism's a very negative, wow. Buddhism's a very negative way of looking at the world because it says life is suffering. The cause of suffering is attachments. Oh my gosh, right? Everything's so awful. And what Thich Nhat Hanh is trying to do, and what we try to do sometimes, is sort of explain how, no, we're just talking about the problem. That doesn't make it a negative way of looking at life to talk about the problem. It's really just, we're trying to be honest. There are struggles in life, and there will always be struggles. At the very least, you're going to grow old and die, and the people you care about are going to grow old and die. Even if nothing else bad happens to you, that's coming, right? So life is suffering. I've heard it put another way, and that is the word for dukkha. Dukkha is the word that gets translated to suffering, and what it means is it's used to relate to a wheel that's a little bit messed up. A wheel that's a little bit messed up. So in the Buddha's time, they talk about an ox cart with a messed up wheel. And to relate this to modern life, because I don't even really know what an ox cart is, but I like to think of a shopping cart with a messed up wheel, because I think that's an experience we've all had. You go to the grocery store and you've got some things to buy, you've got a list, and you get a shopping cart and you take it, and every once in a while that wheel it sticks or it makes a bump, right? Boom, boom. And you're just shopping and it's just annoying. It's just annoying while you're shopping. It's not bad enough that you'll put the cart away, but it's affecting your experience here. It's affecting your experience. And that is what I think of when we say life is suffering, because that word suffering feels really heavy to me. When you say suffering, I think of like those cartoonish images of hell where like somebody's pulling your fingernails out, right? Or you're forced to eat 1,000,000 donuts or whatever. That's suffering, and that's what I think of with suffering. But we're talking about life's just a little bit off kilter. It's just like a shopping cart with a messed up wheel. And sometimes when life is really hard, maybe we have a lot of messed up wheels on our cart, right? And other times, like, our wheels are almost okay, and it's only once in a great while that our wheel is messed up. And that is what life is like. It's like a shopping cart with a messed up wheel. We've got issues, and a problematic thing is, of course, that we tend to make our problems greater sometimes. We tend to make our problems greater sometimes, and that's what we're really talking about guarding against. And as for the Eightfold Path, he uses the traditional thing that's done, which is the word right effort, right mindfulness, right? And I like to use the word wise instead, just because people think right is judgmental. And you could see in the note, he literally said, and this doesn't mean right and wrong are not moral judgments nor arbitrary standards. But people take it that way so often. When they hear right livelihood, they think this is like the Ten Commandments or something. They think this is a harsh and strict rule. And it's just about sort of arranging our life so that our suffering will be less present in our life and have less of a hold on us. That's what it's about. So that's all I wanted to say for today. And again, this is The Heart of the Buddha's Teaching. It's one of my favorite books. And that was the section on the Four Noble Truths. So thank you very much and have a good day.